the what, why, and how of accessible materials and technologies. Chapter 3. How do accessible materials, accessible and assistive technologies work together? Kelly Suding, Technical Assistance Specialist at CAST.
Considering accessibility from the beginning is imperative to ensuring all students can engage in the learning. But what does this look like in the classroom?
So when I was younger, starting off in the first grade, that's when I first noticed things were a bit off. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew I wasn't progressing at the same speed when it comes to learning as everyone else was.
Connor, student.
This is really noticeable during spelling tests, where I still can't spell, but back then it was really, really obvious, like the word because. Couldn't do it. I had to learn how to spell with a jingle in order to process it and get it through.
How do you engage with inaccessible text?
Documents get handed to me. It doesn't really do me a lot of good. I can understand it, I think, based upon what I'm reading, but that could also be different from what's actually coming across in the text, which is where a computer program comes very helpful when it can ear read it to you, where I can highlight it, play it, and I can hear it through earbuds or a headset, something of that variety, and I can hear it, retain it, listen to it, and it's just kind of like a story getting told to you versus having to read it, worrying about words being transposed, letters being backwards, things like that, and you actually reading something else that's not actually what's there, but you believe that actually it's correct. So you go to that conversation with that group, and if you do it just with pen and paper without the computers and the technology, you could be coming across with different things than what's actually happening.
How do you engage with printed text?
Just got done with some finals, and in the finals, one of them wasn't brought to me on the computer like it was supposed to be. And so, therefore I had to sit there, and it's a small little paragraph. It's nothing crazy, it's not a whole page paragraph, but I still had to sit there. It would normally take somebody, maybe they read it once, twice, if they really throw it 3 times, and maybe that'll take a couple seconds, maybe a minute. I'll sit there for 5-10 minutes reading it over and over and over again until I feel comfortable enough that I've actually understood the question and I can actually start writing about it.
How do you engage with scanned documents?
So going through, when I get a PDF or a JPEG, I end up trying to process it through a computer using some text-to-speech software and some talk-to-text software. And doing that, hopefully the end result is for me to actually ear read it. But the problem is that sometimes I end up getting, in essence, photocopies of a document that are just pretty much pictures of a document that are unusable for me, really. I mean, yeah, you can see it, but you can't actually highlight the text. You can't manipulate it so it can speak to you.
Are audiobooks important to your learning?
Audiobooks, very crucial, very helpful. Especially when you have bigger documents, like if you're reading an English class, you normally read books in high school, middle school that have, we're going to read it, we're going to write a report. Same in history classes, read it, write another report. And so having an audiobook that reads that stuff to you is fundamental in the actual learning process for the same reason that listening to a small paragraph is really helpful, because you want to make sure you're actually understanding that information instead of it kind of getting cross-wired in your brain. And so when you don't have that, which can happen, I have to go and seek out other resources by myself independently. And if all else fails, I have to either rely upon somebody else who could read it to me, being very generous with their time, or I'm going to have to read it and hope that I'm actually reading it correctly. So it could be upwards of 20 times in total of people reading it, depending on how many of the proofreaders, like friends and family, read it. So in essence, an average paper could take 30 times really if you're counting everyone reading it multiple times.
How are you impacted by assessments?
Comprehension tests were very interesting when I was younger. I really struggled with decoding. I think a lot of people do, but the comprehension was all there. When I'm decoding something, when I'm actually reading a text or a document that they say, read this and write about it, when I'm decoding it, there was a barrier there. I just wasn't able to do it as efficiently, as effectively as the average person that they were expecting to take this test would. Now, my comprehension, if somebody were to read it to me, would have been different, and my comprehension would have shot probably way off the charts. And so therefore I was stuck at a low reading level of around the fifth grade reading level when I was in like the 8th or 9th grade. It just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And so as a result of that, they ended up pulling me out of different aspects of like my life in school. I had to do extra things outside of school to kind of try and catch up, if you will, when really that wasn't the problem, it was just a decoding problem. So in essence, they would pull me out of gym classes. I remember missing gym for a year or two when I was there, and that I think was kind of counterintuitive because A, it felt like a punishment, that's first of all, and B, when you're actually moving and doing things, I find myself that I'm learning more and I'm learning more effectively materials when I do that.
Without all three components, the accessible educational materials, the accessible technology, and the assistive technology, Connor would not have the opportunity to fully access the content along with his peers. When all three components of accessibility are considered and work together, students experience equitable access and can engage, interact, and decode the content based on their preferences and needs. After all, accessibility is everyone's responsibility.
National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. Find out more at aem.cast.org. OSEP logo. The contents of this video were developed under a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Education, number H327Z1-90004. However, those contents do not necessarily represent the policy of the U.S. Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. Project Officer, Rebecca Sheffield, Ph.D.